आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गांव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। भूल जाए जो रास्ता थोड़ा वापस आना दौड़ा दौड़ा। गलियां लेके बैठी हैं तेरी याद था जिसको तूने छोड़ा। यादें भूल सकता लेकिन खुशबू भूल न पाएगा। घूम घुमा के बन के बादल लौट तू वापस आएगा। चैन मिलेगा वही जहां तू रुक थोड़ा सा पाएगा। घर आने से डर जाने को बना नहीं था तू।
Good evening everyone and a very warm welcome to all of you to this second episode of Universe Rights, organized and supported by Prabha Khaitan Foundation in association with Sri Cements, ITC Rajputana, SAS Women of Jaipur and Spagia Foundation. I thank you all for taking out time and being here with us tonight, this evening. We have with us today Gardi, who studied Hebrew literature and educational science in Jerusalem and Berlin. And he was the editor of a journal called Tzedek, a journal on the ongoing Nakba, a project of the Israeli Jewish initiator Zokrot that aims to make the memory of the expulsion of the Palestinians part of public debate. Tomer's essay Stein was published in 2011. Broken German is one of his first novels, written in German, and we are waiting to see the translation in English. Otherwise, you'll get your money back. His second novel was published in Hebrew in 2018 and German translation in 2019. And Nothing Never Ends. For that, he won the prize of the Leipzig Book Fair 2022. He's currently working on a novel about the lives and work of food delivery workers in 5 different cities in the world. One of them is Delhi, which is what gets him to India, and we are fortunate to have him with us today. Whether he's saying, I think all of you know her, she's moderated for us many times, but she's an educationist in her own right. She's the founder principal of Maharaja Savai Bhavani Singh School, and it's been over 2 decades that she holds fort in this field. She is an ardent believer of holistic education, and she lays equal emphasis on excellence in both co-curricular and in the academic field. With that, I'm going to welcome both of them to stage. Thank you so much. And I will leave the evening in Vedi's and Tomer's able hands. Just requesting you to please keep your mobile phones on silent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Meeta, and welcome, Tomer. It's very exciting to be talking to you. You write mainly in German and Hebrew, and till now none of your works have been translated into English. But we'll come to that later. I would like to start with your book, Broken German, which was shortlisted for the Buchanan Prize, and it provoked a lot of discussion amongst the jury, whether you were suitable for that prize, because I think the prize is meant for non-German authors. Is that so?
Nothing exactly. Maybe I will tell you a bit about all that episode and about the novel itself. But in order for you to get like the picture, I can tell you a word about myself. I was born in the north of Israel, in the northern part of the country, and when I was around 12 years old, my parents had got work in Vienna for 3 years. So all the family went to Vienna for 3 years for my parents' work. I lived in Vienna, but I went to school in an American school. So I never learned German while living in Austria in any formal kind of institution or school, but I learned German from hearing it and from talking it, like in the streets and playing football and all that, like that kind of life. And later, much later, I lived in Vienna for 3 years, and then the family came back to live in Israel. And many years later, I went to live in Berlin. And in Berlin, I had that first level of German that I'd gotten when I was a child. And in Berlin, I continued to live in German and speak German and hear German. But also in Berlin, I never went to study German in any kind of formal way. So I spoke like sort of migrant kind of German, with its spelling, with its grammatical mistakes and the sort of kind of accent that every migrant has when she or he moved from place to place. And in Berlin, I was living in a place where in a neighborhood where there were many other migrants, and I felt really good there with my language being like sort of off. As also, yeah, mine was off, theirs was off. Everybody's languages are sort of like off in a different kind of way, and it felt really like kind of at home. And at some point, I thought, why wouldn't I make this kind of orchestra that I hear in the street into literary voices. And so I started to write a book called Broken German, which I wrote. Which was written with a prior decision to have it. It wasn't a question of authenticity, but it was a question of like writing from some kind of like marginal position in language. So the novel is written with it has spelling mistakes, it has like grammatical mistakes. It's very rhythmical in a way, but it has like it's written in German. But it has a really different rhythm than the one that German language usually has, because it's written by a foreigner who does not use the grammar as it's used. And so this is the novel Broken German, and I read out loud from it in one of Germany's largest prize event, like 3 days. Like there's 14, 15 people sitting in front of like a big crowd and cameras, like 6, 7 cameras, reading out loud a text that they'd written. And I read out from that novel, and the jury had like a fierce discussion about, is this at all worthy of being called literature, because it disregards grammar. It's like written orthographically with mistakes. So there was in the talk there was a combination of first of all there was a discussion combining politics of literature with politics of migration. So there was a talk about who was allowed into the German language and under what conditions, together with who was allowed into like Germany and the German cultural sphere and under what conditions, and that was quite fun.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next question, and that is, you talked about the spellings being not correct. So was it intentional, the spelling being not correct? Because I read somewhere in one of the critiques of your work, the words that you used, Aryan, and you omitted one letter, and there's also another word which is something
Yes,
like that.
yeah.
And by omitting a letter, the word, I think, does it acquire another meaning, and was that your intention? And because these two words that I came across, they also mean Aryan, maybe the superiority of the race, and also the culture. You're talking about the opera and the cultural superiority that the Germans want to show to the immigrants, maybe. And the other word is also, the literal translation, I think, is turning into ashes. So is it a kind of a post-memory narration where you're going back to German history of Nazism and Holocaust? So I would like you to talk about that.
I mean, the novel itself certainly has to do with acting inside or acting on German contemporary memory politics. Also being a Jew, so being able to have a special position in that. Also being able to laugh at some things that the Germans who are not Jews usually don't allow themselves to use humor for. But the examples you gave of the words misspelled, I did not do it on purpose. I mean, I wrote the text in the best possible language that I had at that time. Of course, I was still a writer, yeah? So of course, as any writer does, I considered, should I use this word or should I use that word, and how to build a sentence and how to build paragraphs, of course. But you must imagine writing if you want to write a novel where you insist on the words being there as you would hear them, the first thing you have to do is to deactivate the word autocorrect function from your computer. Otherwise it has all these red lines under it, so you don't want to see this. So you deactivate the word autocorrect, and then you write. And then the mistakes or the different ways of reading the words is there because it exists in the nature of the language. In the nature of the language, there is a kind of even musical maybe, or just oratorical vicinity between an Aryan and an aria. It's there. So if you make a mistake, it somehow brings people out of balance in their own language, and all these are different ways of understanding these sort of, it wasn't spelling mistakes, of understanding anew these words had to do with what the language has in it and what the readers as interpreters of a text could bring brought with them.
Yes, and in this book there is also a narrator who keeps commenting and who keeps expressing his opinion. Is that a bit autobiographical? Is it somewhere you're expressing your opinion?
Some of it has autobiographical elements. Of course, I think it's very hard to write outside of one's experience, but it's not. But it's a novel. One of the biggest dangers for a novel is being pedagogical and trying to teach the people about the truth and about what's right and what's wrong. So it wasn't Tome trying to tell the Germans how they should live just masking it in a novel form, but rather having a like an outside look at a migrant living inside Berlin.
Yes, so this is, since I haven't read the book, is it about the migrant experience in different countries? Could you tell us a little about what is this book about?
You know, it's very hard to say. It's very hard to say, like what it. You know, the book has been very widely. The book has been very widely written about in like German, like feuilletons and stuff. And one of the things that made me very happy is that every critique that was published about that book had a different way of saying what the book is about. So it's yeah. So for me, like, you know, I mean, it's hard enough to write the book, and you have to be also interpret it. But yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a novel that sucks into its language and into its form the experience of being foreigner in a place. So the narrative is also why the narrative structure is so like disentangled, like foreigner, like, you know, you keep losing yourself and you don't know where you are. You also don't know where you are in the story sometimes. Yeah. Do you say like this also, like in English, like to lose the red thread? Do you say like that? How do you say it? You know that? Like, do you also say in English, like to lose the red thread? You say thread? Lose the thread. Yeah. Lose the thread? It's not thread in English? To lose the thread? I think in German it's a red thread. So, for example, in the novel there's like a bar, and it's called The Red Thread. And whenever, like, you know, the story gets sort of like all over the place, so the narrators go to the red thread. It's a bar, and it's something like that. It's no, you have like you have a narration that is like a thread. Yeah, that's, you know, this is where you can find yourself. Yeah. And then it has like all these things happening around, you know. So there's the bar, the red thread, where people can go to in order to understand like where they are. So yeah, so the novel has like the aspect of like, because of the language is broken, it's because the narration is so like unconventional. It has in it. You know, it took inside of this language and its form the experience of being a foreign, and into this it also has the experience of being a Jewish migrant in Germany, which is different than being a Syrian refugee or a Pakistani refugee in Germany. And the story of the Jewish migrant in Germany into this like has a sort of like its own set of questions that it opens up. For example, like in Berlin, there's a big the Jewish Museum in Berlin. So there's the narrator, and he goes to the Jewish narrator, and he goes to the Jewish Museum because he wants to stand there like this and to see if he becomes like a part of the exhibition. If he just, you know, if he just stands there and, you know, and somehow try to understand, you know, if there's a Jewish museum and you're a Jew in Germany, so are you a part of some kind of exhibition now? I mean, are you still alive, or are you just like some kind of, you know, walking piece of history in the city?
But somewhere you've also written that the Jews who are coming back to Germany, they are welcomed. And the experience is very different for immigrants who are coming from other countries.
Yes, it's definitely so. I mean, it's not divided like this that the Jews are welcome and the rest of them are not. Germany is still a society that has like lots of racism in it. Lots of prejudices that have to do with color, like skin color, and with religion. So of course, not all migrants are treated the same. And also the Jewish migrant, it depends on your color, color.
Yes, you've written that they are accepted as the white people and others are not.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think what you're referring to is, there's, the choice to write in a broken language was a choice to take on the position of the migrant, yeah? The position of the migrant, the position of the one who does not seek to become German, yeah? Does not seek like to belong now to the society and to be a part of it, and a part of that had to do with in the Second World War, also before the Second World War, and during the Holocaust, Jewish people in Germany, they were the ultimate, sort of the ultimate blacks. They were the ultimate others. They were the ones on the bottomest of bottomists in the social hierarchy, and one of Germany's political moves in order to somehow become a legitimate nation among other nations after the Second World War was to somehow sort of repent to the Jews as what they have done, and that had to do with turning the Jews from the blacks that they used to be into now white. So you can change your skin color just by changing a context. It doesn't have to do with really what your skin looks like, yeah. But the price that the Jewish I'm talking very, very flatly, but the price that had to be paid for it is that Jewish people in Germany would rather not speak up when it comes to rights that are being harmed of other people who are not white, mainly Muslim and mainly Palestinians. So there was a kind of a deal, it wasn't a deal, it's really, to call it a deal sounds as if, somebody behind some dark curtain was making some kind of no, but there was a shift of of power, and this in broken German tries to say, this is a kind of a deal that in the language of the book I do not accept.
So, talking of museums, brings me to another piece of your writing, which is rock paper, and in which you've written that where you were born and brought up in a kibbutz, and they have made a museum there, and you first heard it as a rumor that there was an Arab village here which was destroyed, and the stones from that village were used to create this museum. But you're also very surprised that the museum, although it's talking about development and all that, but it's not talking about how it's come up at that place. There's no mention. It is like erasing something from memory also. So would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah. The book is called stone paper or rock paper. It has not been translated to English yet, and the book starts with a rumor that I've heard when I was more or less in my 20s, and the rumor said that where I grew up, in the kibbutz where I grew up, there's like a big museum for history and nature of the surrounding, of the place.
This history starts in 1948.
The museum started to be built at 1950 or so, or 49. And at some point I heard this rumor that the museum is built, it's a big museum made out of stone, and I heard a rumor that the museum is built from stones that were taken from a depopulated Palestinian village that existed 30, 40 kilometers away from the kibbutz. Don't know how many of you know how much about this, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There was, in 1948, there was a war, not surprisingly, not a long time after the partition of India. And there was also the British also wanted to, make a partition in Israel and Palestine, and this part to the Jews and this part to the Palestinians. And around that there was a war, and which the Palestinians have lost, and many about 800,000 Palestinians were expelled out of the new state of Israel into the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Egypt. And so out of one of these villages, the people from, the rumor was that out of one of these villages, not far away from where I was born, people went and took the stones of the village and erected from it a museum for history. I was born and grew up there, so I've been to this museum hundreds of times, and in this museum, I knew it. There was nothing told of the history of Palestinian present and lives in the surrounding, which the history museum was, wanted to tell the history of. So I heard this is a rumor, so I started to ask around. I did lots of archival work. I went to the archives of the kibbutz and to the archive of the state to see if it's true. And quite quickly I understood that it is true, because in the archives there were documents of transforming the stones from one place to the other, and so on. And so the book is an effort of trying to, first of all, trying to find out if the rumor is true or not, which quickly is found out to be true. And then trying to understand a sort of great deal of questions around it, why, how does a village turn into a history museum that denies the existence of its own, building material? What does it mean about the way we remember and forget? What does it mean about the way we, a community, narrates its own past? And what does it mean when we try to change that narration? Because this thing with museum, it's tricky, because on the other hand, it's a total act of erasure. You take the village, you take down the stones, you transform it into a history museum. But it's which doesn't tell of the village out of which it was made. But on the other hand, think about it, you don't have a picture of it in your head, but this kibbutz, this village, is really kind of a small place. And this museum is by far the biggest, most present building inside the kibbutz. So on the other hand, building this thing like that is you just need to change the story about this museum. You just need to tell the story of it being made out of the stones, and suddenly you have this deed somehow tattooed in the landscape of this place, not being able to in any way deny its own past. So it has this double kind of function to it. And stone paper is a text that tries to deal with these questions in many like also literary reforms and like that?
Because in India we've had, I don't think I can call it a similar experience, but our country was also divided into three when we got our independence. And we have this huge work, which has been written about partition and how people were displaced. And there are movies made on this, and books, and people talk about it. So, what is your take? What are the pitfalls of really trying to erase memory like that? Can it be done really?
I guess it can. I think it can. It just depends to what extent. And also, you don't erase something and then it's erased. You have to keep erasing it.
Yes, you have to make an attempt.
Yeah, you have to make an attempt, and it's like a continuous attempt. So the continuous attempt to erase something, sort of to like push some kind of subconsciousness down, is a very like violent attempt, and it keeps like reappearing, a huge percentage of Palestinians living in Gaza today are in fact refugees from the 48 warring Palestinians who were not originally from Gaza but fled from the new state of Israel or from Palestine into Gaza, and sort of now this erased histories, and also but these real people that live there make it impossible and impossible to be forgotten of, and they need to be like re-erased, or if you can call a war like that, or dealt with in a different kind of way, which is sadly not happening.
Okay, so coming to a very different topic now, to your present book, which is A Passage to India. Now, there was that famous book by A.M. Foster, A Passage to India. Are there any parallels here, or is it different? And this is, I know, I've read a little bit about two stories. One is about, in fact, both are about food. One is about the food delivery person who doesn't then really deliver it. And the other is about spices, how Indian food is very spicy. Yes, so talk about that.
Okay, so this is a new novel that I'm working on now. A New Passage to India is only like one chapter or part of it. Yeah. So the novel in whole is a novel telling about lives and work of people working in food deliveries. Basically, people like working in for companies like Zomato and Swiggy in 5 different cities in the world. Yeah, and Tel Aviv is one, Berlin is one, Istanbul, Buenos Aires, and Delhi. So the reason why I'm in India is because I spent 5-6 weeks in Delhi in order to talk to people who do that kind of work there and understand what kind of life they have, what kind of difficulties they have at work, in order to gather as much information and knowledge as I can, in order to make out of that later, the part of that book that will be about that will tell the story of the Delhi food delivery person in Delhi. The food delivery worker is a woman, so it tells the story of
So did you find any similarity? You're working on 5 cities. So did you find there are any similar?
One of the motivations that brought me to write this book is because I wanted to write a book about globalization, Somehow it also I also thought of it in regards to like the universe rights kind of topic of the whole like series, and what does it mean to write in a universal way? What is the difference between the universe and the global? These kinds of questions. But I wanted to write a book about living in global, a certain kind of living in a globalized world. And one of the things that interests me about people doing food delivery work is that it is a work that is on one hand, it's like exactly the same everywhere. You have a phone, the rider has a phone, the rider has an app. There's like a delivery, the rider goes to the restaurant, the food, bring to the customer, go, it's the same everywhere, yeah? But on the other hand, like it's also really, really different wherever you do it. Like, to ride with a pizza on your back in Helsinki in January is not the same like riding with a pizza on your back in January in Delhi. It's just really extremely different, yeah? And now, so it's not only the weather, it's also, the topography of the city, but it's also like work, labor law, that's different. It's also attitudes to social hierarchies. It's also like attitudes toward who is served and who's being served, and the whole attitude to that. It's about people's attitude towards food. So there's many, so there's like all these similarities but all these differences, and I wanted to juxtapose like 4 or 5 stories next to each other out of 5 different cities, and to like that tell some kind of a story or tell stories about what does it mean to live like about globalization, mainly for the working class.
Yes, and mostly I think these people who are delivering food remain faceless. You don't really interact with them so much. You just take your delivery and you really don't know the person who's coming to deliver it.
Yeah, usually you don't. I mean, either because the person who orders the food is just hungry now, wants to eat, but not only because of that, also because in order for the food delivery worker to make enough money, they have to leave the thing and they have to go because they get paid by the delivery. They can't sit and have a chai with you. They don't have time for this unless something happens.
Yes, and that is what happens in your story.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about it? What happens that the dot remains there?
So there's, sure. The story, the Delhi part of the story starts with a journalist. Diwali is approaching. There's a journalist. Her husband is away for a business trip. She has just sent her maid or cook to spend the days, the Diwali days with her family. So she stays alone with her 2 kids at home, and she plans on Diwali evening. She plans to go to her sister somewhere. To her sister, and she also lives in Delhi. So the journalist thinks she will go to her sister to spend the Diwali evening there. But when Diwali comes, when the evening comes, she has a headache. She doesn't want to go out of the crazy city. She just wants to stay at home with the children. So she manages to persuade the children that they stay at home and they celebrate Diwali at home, and they will order food out. So they sit at home and they order some food, and the children look at the phone as they they watch the blue dot signaling on the app, on the phone signaling their food approaching to them on the map, and how nice it is and how nice it looks when it make this turn and this turn. And, it's getting so close to me and so much fun. But then at a certain point the dot like stops moving, and the children say, "Mama, the dot is not moving anymore." And the mother says, "Yeah, it's Diwali. It's a mess out. You know, it will come." But the dot like doesn't move, and it doesn't move. And the mother, the journalist, tries to call like the, how do you call it? The call center, where people answer, and they have to try to call, but there's no answer because Diwali and everything is so full. And they continue to look at the app, and then they see suddenly the blue point moves again, but it starts moving like in a different direction. Yeah. So this is like the way the the Delhi a part of the novel starts, and I'm writing now, the story. The story. I've written 3 paragraphs today. Yeah.
And the other story is about how the Indian food is very spicy. And this person who's an Indian, she's coming back here to teach German, I think, and somebody's telling her that you can always have a pizza or a burger. And she feels that why would I have a pizza or a burger? I'm going to India and I want to experience the food there.
It's all part of the same story that in the end, they meet. But when you tell people, in Berlin or in Tel Aviv that I'm going to India, it's kind of amazing how it's kind of as if everybody like threw on me like the kind of image of India that they've had. Yeah? So some people would say, "Oh, you would have such a spiritual time there," and talk about that aspect of India. And some people would say, I don't know, "Wow, it's so full of people, man. Beware of the cities." And everybody would like throw like a kind of image of India that they have on me telling the story. I was like kind of a blank page like for everybody's like stories of India. But the story about there's a story about 5 German students coming to Delhi for like student exchange, and one of the German students is a teaches German to new immigrants in Germany. So she tells her class, the German students, and German teacher, the teacher of German tells her class that she would be going to Delhi for a couple of months. So there is like an Indian student in Berlin studying German. She raises her hand. She says to her teacher, "If you go to India, you better now start getting used to eating spicy food. Because if you get there now, you will starve." Yeah? And the teacher is not really sure like what to do, because on the one hand it makes sense, on the other hand, she needs to start now trying to get used somehow to eat spicy food. She doesn't know what to do, but because she's a curious woman, she goes to one of the Indian restaurants in the neighborhood, to like a restaurant that she knows, where she knows the waiters and the owners, and she says to them, "Look, I'm going to Delhi in a month or two," and the Indian waiter says to her, "Delhi, I heard it's a great place, but I'm from Kerala, I've never been there." And she says to him that she wants to get used to eating spicy food, and can she make her food spicy? So she makes her really a very spicy dish, and so she eats the food, and she gets like all hiccups and stuff. And there's a story about, basically it's a story about wanting to, she has no way to, she hears so much about India. She he has absolutely no way to prepare for this visit, you know, for the air, for the people, for the culture. He has no way to prepare for it, but, you know, eating spicy food, it's a way to somehow get prepared for this experience that she would have. As this is her way of, you know, of making, you know, at least, you know, taking some kind of control over her life and her visit here.
How was your experience eating Indian food?
You know, I mean, I grew up in, I was born and grew up in Israel. Israel is, I mean, the kitchen in Israel is very diverse because, I mean, first of all, it's Palestinian kitchen, and then it's kitchen that is brought to Israel by Jewish people from like all over the world. People from Morocco, people from Tunisia, people from Poland, people from, you know, from Ukraine, people from all over the world. So you can find like almost everything there in some kind of like, you know, a mixed way. And especially the North African kitchen, Yemen, Morocco, Tunisia, all these countries, they eat spicy food. So I'm used to it. So it's okay.
Yeah. And talking about food and Israeli food, I've read that there are very strong norms and laws which are followed when food is cooked. Is that so? With, like you're saying, Jews coming from all over the world, and they have different cuisines and different ways of cooking.
I mean, yeah, the Jewish. I mean, if somebody is practicing like Jewish religious law, and then there's a set of rules of what one should eat and what one shouldn't eat. I mean, all these laws are quite, more or less the same all over the communities because they all read the same, like, holy, there's holy texts.
Are they followed very strictly?
So it depends, it depends by whom. Some Jewish people, first of all, it's important to make a separation between Jewish people and Israel. It's like two different things. In Israel, inside Israel, like not counting the West Bank and Gaza, inside Israel, there's 25% of the population is Palestinian, so they are Jewish. So among Jewish people, whether in Israel or not in Israel, some people, practice, the Jewish halachic law. And so there are some rules of what you do and don't do. It's not allowed to eat milk together with meat. It's not allowed to eat pork. It's not allowed to eat like shrimps and that kind of stuff. It's not. Yeah, there are various. There is law.
Yeah, so it's
but some people follow that. Some people don't follow it. I mean, I'm not a practicing Jew, so I eat milk together with meat and
Yeah, I think communities in India also have their own norms and laws pertaining to food, but then not everyone follows it.
But I heard in India it's even more complex, no? I heard, some of the time, on these days you're vegetarian, on these days
yes, on certain days we don't eat meat. on Monday maybe we don't eat meat, but otherwise we eat meat.
When you say Jewish, it's confusing.
So yes, it is different people following different norms, but yes, there are food norms. So with this, I open it to the audience for questions. No questions?
Not about your literature. I think both of you are wearing the Palestinian colors. So
Didn't plan it like that.
whatever. So Would you like to say something on the present situation that's there?
Oh, I mean, what can I say? I mean, I think the situation is terrible. First of all, I think the situation is like horrible. It's never been as bad. The hostages should be, the Israeli hostages in Gaza should be returned home. Israel should like stop bombing Gaza. You know, all these things like should, you know. I mean, first of all, in my opinion, you know, there's no one to call here to because you know it's just us. But so I mean, I will not even make a gesture of calling for something, you know. But you know, it has to stop. It has to stop, and there has to be some kind of way to reach some kind of agreement between the two sides as to how to live together in this on this piece of land. Yeah, I mean myself, I'm you know. The situation in Gaza is like really terrible, as you all know. I mean, my immediate concern is like with my parents and my brother and his family. As I told you, they live on the village, like on the north. Since 2 months, they're evacuated from their homes because there's fear that there will be war from Lebanon. So they're evacuated for 2 months. The whole family and the whole community. Imagine a hotel like this, you know, one community living in a hotel, so like a community of 700-800 people living in a hotel somewhere in Haifa, fearing an attack or a war on the northern front, having no idea like when they will be able to return home. So, of course, it's kind of. So, like, of course, on the one hand, for me, you know, as my family, you know, I care about them, like, first and for all, yeah? But of course, on the other hand, I know that the situation in Gaza is like 100 times worse than theirs, yeah? So I live in this, you know, emotional way of, you know, I care about my mother and father and brother and his family. But on the other hand, on the knowledge, that is like much more intellectual, that what's happening in Gaza is much worse, and me personally living in some kind of, I mean, not really knowing what to do, and hoping for some kind of political resolution that doesn't really seem as if it's near because. The pragmatical forces on both sides of the societies have been throughout the years made weaker and weaker, and the voices who say it's either all ours or nothing will be here get stronger, unfortunately, and stronger.
Hello. So, congratulations on the session. It was very enlightening. My question is regarding the broken German you were talking about. So, you were looking at the whole book from perspective of a foreigner settled and traveled. And the narrative is very clear in your head when you talk about the red thread and things around it and everything. But the language is not in command of the whole narrative. So how difficult was it to kind of conceptualize and write it down in that kind of language? Because there are a lot of stereotypical do's and don'ts around writing books and how one approaches it. Mostly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I came, I studied, I made my BA in literature, and I read a lot, so I guess I knew, like, more or less, what are the conservative norms of how a novel should be like. But I also knew from theory and from practice that this kind of structure leaves out a great many stories that such a structure, basically cannot hold. And this was also the theoretical critiques against the novel as a form, feminist critiques against the novel as a form. What kind of women's stories, such a form cannot tell? I heard a nice story in one of the festivals. Where was it? That there are Europeans, European publishers complaining about the fact that in Indian novels there are so many characters, because if you write a novel in Europe about family, there are 3-4 people there. But you can't tell a story of it's very hard to tell a story of somebody living in a society with such big families and tell a story about 3 people, So what is it about so the novel as a European genre, what kind of stuff it leaves out, what kind of experiences it leaves out, what it cannot hold. So I knew that I need to implode the novel, the form, in order to tell a story. A novel that is conventional wouldn't be able to do. How hard was it? The experience is a lived experience. So it was. I lived it, and I live it. So it was hard. It was hard in the same way that writing a novel is just a hard thing to do. I wrote this novel for 4 years. And you sit on your computer and you type and you type and you type and you type and you have no idea if it will ever something happen with it. But imploding the novel as a form was more like something that made it easier for me to write than harder. It made it harder to read, but that's a different question.
Thank you both for a very, very interesting session. I was wondering, I'll take you up from the fact that you said it's a lived experience of sorts. How do you look at migration? Of course, the lived experience of it, if you have firsthand, some kind of an account. But how do you look at today's literary representations of a migrant identity vis-a-vis the troubled times that we are in, and your almost firsthand account of the kind of turmoil? So how do you think, literature sort of, does it bridge that gap? Does it adequately bring that story, into our lives who are kind of removed from that reality? Even so, we are dealing with our own kinds of demons. That's notwithstanding.
It's a very broad question, of course, because it depends on which literature, in which language, in which space, in which location. I can talk about Germany, and I can talk German, and I can talk something about Israel or Hebrew. In German, in Germany, it's like something strange happened. In Germany, Germany tried really as a political decision. They really tried to
embrace migration. Yeah. With accepting migrants from Syria after the civil war there, and the Syrians and the Egyptians, people losing the Arab Spring, unfortunately, and so to embrace sort of migrant voices, and also in the literary sense. So to allow these voices to exist, sort of like me. Who knows if 20 years ago, I think 20 years ago, a novel like Broken German would have never been published. Yeah, so I'm part of this general political atmosphere of allowing this this to happen. Now, of course, to everything there's a danger. And one danger of that kind of behavior is of tokenism. okay, so you give some migrants to write in their strange like ways and forms, and you can make Margaret check, you know, and now your policies are good and moral, and you can continue with your life, but the actual communities who are actual everyday life of migrants have nothing to do with that. Yeah, this is the danger, of course, of every symbolic act, you know, of making sure that in the Benetton, you know, commercial, you know, kids of all color show and that kind of stuff. Now, of course, as a writer, it also gives you, as a writer, it's also, you know, writers often have like imposter syndromes, and you know, and as a writer, like in this position where your work is being acknowledged, also because you are a migrant, or because you are Jewish, or because you are Muslim, and so on, it can lead you to a position where you know, for example, you get praised, or you get a prize, and you don't know, you're never really sure if you got this prize because your book is really good, or because you got this prize because, you know, somebody thought, okay, you better put in someone who doesn't have blonde hair in it. Yeah. So these are all dangers that exist, like in that kind of like, you know, when literature and politics mix, and they're always mixed. And this is like some of the problems there.
Hi, very interesting topics. You know, you have written about many, many different topics. But coming back to your first, broken German, part of it, of course, you answered to her question. I was just curious that before you wrote this broken German, were there any books written with this incorrect, or what you say is the new form of writing in a language which is grammatically not correct, the spellings are not correct? Did you get inspired reading something? And has this been really been accepted as a literary work? And what is the future of this? That's one part. And the second part is on a personal, you know, family level. In Rome, we were staying with a Jew family who was settled for many generations. And there was a lot of family, you know, 3 generations staying together. Of course, Italians have this thing of, you know, family bonding like the Indians have. So is this the norm also in Israel, within the, you know, the normal Jew communities?
I will start with the question about broken German. I think I have not seen novels written like with mistakes as such, but I did like get inspired from people making colloquial use of language in novels, mostly in Israel, in Hebrew literature. But I was also like inspired from, I don't know, I mean, literature somehow is very conservative in this regard, because if you think about hip hop, the people wouldn't say, excuse me, what is this? It's not the way you speak English, That would be absurd. And that didn't start with hip hop. It started with at least in the United States, it started with blues, and I'm sure it also has like other examples from other cultural contexts that I'm not familiar with. But those were the things that I learned from, and that novel that I wrote was accepted as literature by it depends on how you measure it, and if somebody will read this or not in 50 years, who knows? But this novel was accepted as literature, And the future of it, like who knows what the future is. I know that I mean, so we didn't talk about, there was one novel that we didn't talk about at all, but maybe it's for another time. Yeah. And to your question about the way families live, you know, Israel it's a very diverse place. Most people and families that I know don't live like with 3 generations together. I mean, my social context is rather secular place where people move out. Now, of course, with neoliberalization of society, where everything becomes so expensive, people need their grandparents more to take care of the kids. So people move and live closer to their parents, so then they can help with the children, because now both parents have to go to work and all this. Yeah, so they move closer, but they don't like move in the same house. Palestinian families live often like in more in that kind of way, and Jewish Orthodox people also live often in that kind of way.
Thank you so much. That was actually riveting, and thank you, Vaidehi, for holding the session so expertly. I'm going to invite the General Manager of ITC Rajputana, Mr. Dipendra Rana, to please come up and present the mementos to our speakers.
Look here, sir.
Thank you so much once again for all of you who have joined us today, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you. Thank you, Prabha. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. How sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Back again.